When the mug is leather hard, this is the best time to do burnishing. And burnishing makes your clay soft and smooth, and the surface feels a lot better than the original clay surface where it's a little bit rougher or maybe uneven. So burnishing makes the surface very smooth. It'll be easier to carve from a smooth surface. You'll also want to make sure that you gently burnish the edge, the rim, the lip of the mug. You might even want to burnish some places in the inside. Any little cracks or anything, you can burnish those away using a wooden tool with a rounded end. Next, you're going to want to use a pencil to add your name to the bottom of the mug. And now you need to apply 4 coats of black glaze. So 1 coat means I put the glaze all over the clay mug, let it dry, and then the second coat would be applying the glaze for a second time. You'll need 4 total, which sounds like a lot, but you need it because your clay is leather hard. It hasn't been fired yet. So I'm just applying this black glaze using a soft brush, and I'm going to apply the black wherever I want it. You will not be adding glaze to the inside of the mug. The inside for everybody is going to be white because our clay is going to turn white after firing. You could do the rim with a color, either black or another color that you choose, but the inside is going to stay white, so we're not going to glaze the inside. We'll just glaze the outside of the mug and the handle. I'm leaving my handle blank, so I'm not going to add black to the handle. I'm going to actually add a color to the handle. Now you'll notice this is inevitable. There will be some glaze in some places you don't want the glaze to be. So you can use a sponge to clean up any places where that glaze maybe got on in the wrong place. This is especially useful for checking the bottom of the mug and making sure that there is no glaze on the bottom. If there's glaze on the bottom, it can get stuck to the kiln shelf, and this can basically ruin the shelf and ruin your ceramic piece. So it's very, very important to make sure that no glaze ends up on the bottom of your mug. You might notice that it might stain your clay a little bit, and that's okay if it stains. You just need to worry more about if there's a lot of glaze or spots of glaze on the bottom. Now I'm going to choose a color, and the color I chose is called blue-green. And these colors match pretty well to the colors that they'll fire to. You'll need to apply at least 3 coats of this type of glaze. So 3 coats of the colored glaze. And make sure that you let the coats dry in between. So let them dry. It should be no longer shiny when you apply the next coat. With handles, you want to make sure you get into every little spot. So you might have to lift the mug up and hold it in a certain way so you can see different places. And now we're going to talk about making a sgraffito design, so carving away the clay. And sgraffito basically means just scratching away the clay and carving away the clay in a ceramic piece. So my glaze is almost dry. My handle's a little wet still, but the outside body of my clay mug is pretty much dry and ready to go. I can touch it. It's no longer shiny. And I had 4 coats of the black glaze and 3 coats of the colored glaze. And I'm going to look back at my design plan and I'm going to determine which tools I'm going to use first. I think for this project I'm mostly going to use a pencil and a loop tool. And the pencil, I'm just going to scratch away any places where I have some thin lines. So any thin lines or thin details, a pencil actually works pretty well. You don't have to worry about the graphite making any marks on the clay. Any graphite that's left over will just burn off in the kiln. It'll burn away. You won't see it anymore. You'll notice that there's sometimes some crumbs that happen when you're carving away the clay. If you see a lot of crumbs, it's okay. You'll just need to brush those away. At the end, when you're all done, we can take a brush and we'll just brush those extra crumbs away and make sure that they're no longer sticking to the side. As the clay gets drier, there will be less crumbs. So I divided my mug up into three different sections. So I have bottom, middle, and then top. You might have divided your mug in a different way, and you can start doing the design wherever you feel best. So wherever you feel like you want to start, that's fine. Now I'm using the loop tool, and the loop tool is awesome for making thicker lines. You can hold it at an angle and it carves away a lot. So if you have places where you want to carve away a lot of the black, you can easily do that with a loop tool. So a loop tool does thicker lines, and it can also do other details. Later on I'll use it to make kind of a polka dot pattern, and it's really up to you, but I like using both tools, both pencil and loop tool. There are other tools that you might want to try out and just see how they work. Those are just my preferences, but lots of different sgraffito ceramics artists use different tools for sgraffito. Now, even though this video is sped up, I really was trying to be very careful not to bang my handle. I had to carefully hold it because the longer it's sitting out, the drier it's going to get, and that means the more delicate it's going to be, so the more likely it's going to break. So you need to be really careful with it as you're working. Don't press too hard, don't bang it on the table. Now you'll see I'm using that loop tool to kind of make that polka dot pattern on the inside of my checkerboard that I made. And it's not perfect, but I kind of like how it's not perfect. I like a slightly imperfect design. So I'm just carving away that little polka dot pattern. Now, just a reminder, wherever we carve away will be white. So any line or design that we carve away, that's going to turn white. It looks gray right now, but it will turn white after we put it into the kiln and it fires, because the clay turns white after it's been fired. And I decided to add just an extra little thing onto the rim of my mug. I added a few little lines, and you can always change your design. That's totally fine. I just like having a design plan drawn out ahead of time. And the last step I'm going to do is carving a design onto my handle. This is the part where you have to be extremely careful. If you have a very thin handle, you need to be very, very careful not to press too hard or it could break. If you have a very, very thin handle, I recommend not doing any sgraffito design on that handle. Just leave the handle alone. You can glaze the handle, but don't try and carve away anything. If you have a very complicated handle, avoid doing the sgraffito on that handle. And when you're all done, you can brush away the crumbs on your sgraffito mug, and it's ready to be put into the kiln to be fired.